It's boring, but this is how the money comes. Neville Goddard taught that the very dullness you feel about your own daily habit of mind is the place where your fortune is quietly being decided. And here is where we begin. In the book of Exodus, chapter 16, the children of Israel wander in a wilderness, and every single morning, without fail, without fireworks, they must go out and gather their bread from the ground, the same field, the same hour, the same quiet motion of the hand. And the scripture says it plainly, the people went out and gathered a certain rate every day. And Neville Goddard would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? The children of Israel are not people who lived and died long ago, they are you, wandering the wilderness of your own doubting mind. And the manna is not bread at all, it is the substance of imagination itself, appearing fresh every morning for the one who will bend down and gather it. And here is what stops most people cold. They want the manna to fall once, in a single dramatic shower. They want to feel the wish fulfilled one glorious time and be finished with the whole matter. But the very method they are using to chase their miracle is the thing standing between them and it, because the gathering was never meant to be one event, it was always meant to be a practice. Quiet, repeated, almost embarrassingly plain, and that, friend, is exactly how the money comes. So before we go further, let us put this into your own mouth, in your own voice, right now. Say it with me. I am the one for whom money moves with ease. I am already living inside the abundance I have been asking for. Imagination creates my reality. Again, I am the one for whom money moves with ease. I am already living inside the abundance I have been asking for. Imagination creates my reality. And if you would like tomorrow's teaching to find you the same quiet way this one did, consider subscribing before we continue. And if something in you just went still while you said that, type the 2 words "it's done" in the comments below. Right now, let it be your small, quiet seal on what we are building here today. The first key is this: money is not a chase, it is a state. And you move into states the way you walk from one room of a house into another. You are not the room, you only visit it. And most people spend their whole lives running down a hallway after a door that keeps retreating, checking the bank balance, refreshing the number, hoping the outer fact will shift first so the inner feeling can follow. And it never works that way. Not once, not for anyone. Think of the woman who checks her account every morning before her coffee is even poured. She is not gathering manna, she is gathering evidence of lack, and imagination, being the faithful servant it is, simply hands her more of what she came looking for. And notice, she is not even aware she is asking for anything. She believes she is simply checking a fact, but every check is a small prayer. And the prayer she keeps praying is not enough. Not enough, not enough. And heaven, being perfectly obedient, keeps answering exactly that prayer. But suppose instead she rose the same way each morning and quietly assumed the feeling of a woman who is provided for. Not loud, not frantic, just settled, just certain. The way you are certain of your own name, that quiet assumption, held without strain, is the true gathering. It is not that she pretends the number is different. It is that she inhabits a self for whom the number is simply not the point anymore. And picture a second scene. A man scrolling job listings late at night, refreshing the same page again and again, telling himself he is being responsible, but really he is rehearsing the state of the one still waiting, still unchosen, still outside the door. And the very screen glowing in his dark room becomes an altar to lack, night after night, and nothing changes because nothing within him has changed. Now picture him instead closing the laptop, resting back against his pillow, and for just a few quiet minutes, feeling what it is to already hold the position, the small, ordinary satisfaction of a Monday morning with somewhere expected to be. That feeling, held gently, is worth more than 100 more refreshes of the page. This is not a technique you perform once and abandon. It is a room you learn to live in. You do not visit it for 5 minutes and rush back out into the hallway of checking and worrying. You take up residence. You hang your coat there. You let it become simply where you live. And Neville Goddard called this daily returning to the feeling of the wish fulfilled the whole secret. Not a secret of intensity, a secret of steadiness. It is not effort that moves the money. It is identity. And identity is built the plain way. One quiet morning at a time. Not once. Not dramatically. But daily. The way a person brushes their teeth without needing to feel inspired first. I am the state I have chosen, and money must follow me there. The second key is this. Living in the end is not a mood you visit for 5 dramatic minutes and then leave behind for the other 18 hours of your day. It is a residence, and this is precisely where the boredom comes in, because drama feels like progress, and steadiness feels like nothing at all. You sit for your 5 minutes, you feel the relief of the wish fulfilled, the check has cleared, the debt is gone, and then you stand up, and the feeling evaporates the moment your phone lights up with a bill, and you wonder why nothing changes. But Neville Goddard was clear that the imaginal act is only the seed. The living in the end all day long in your unguarded thoughts is the soil and the water. And notice the word unguarded, because it is not the moments you are watching yourself that betray you, it is the small, unnoticed hour where the old feeling sneaks back in wearing the costume of just being realistic. A lantern is not lit once and left to burn on its own forever. It needs a small, quiet feeding of oil through the long hours of the night. And the flame you carry from your 5 minutes is exactly this kind of flame. Small, steady, needing only gentle attention to keep from guttering out in a draft of worry. Picture 2 people who both do the same 5-minute exercise before bed, feeling the relief of money already sufficient, already calm. One of them closes her eyes and lets that feeling go the instant she opens them, checking the mail with dread, wincing at prices, sighing over the cost of things, telling her friend at lunch that money simply slips through her fingers. And every one of those small moments is a fresh coin dropped into the old account she is trying to close. Her lantern has gone dark by 9 in the morning, and she does not even notice the room has grown cold around her. The other one still pays her bills, still goes to work, still hears the same joke at lunch, but she does not add her voice to it. She carries the residue of her 5 minutes, like a low, warm hum underneath every errand. A quiet undertone she does not have to manufacture, because she simply keeps returning to it, gently, the way you return your eyes to the road without effort, while driving. And it is the second one whose outer world begins, slowly, unglamorously, to rearrange itself around what she has been assuming in secret. Not because she worked harder at the exercise, but because she refused to spend the hours after it in a state that contradicted what she had just assumed. This is the part nobody wants to hear because it will not make a clip. It is simply the plain daily insistence on a feeling, held gently, dropped for a moment perhaps, picked back up without scolding yourself, held again tomorrow. It's boring, but this is how the money comes. Not through the 5 minutes of feeling, but through the 16 hours after it, where you refuse to abandon what you assumed. So ask yourself honestly, what does your lantern look like by noon? Has it already gone out somewhere between breakfast and your commute? Or is it still faintly glowing beneath the surface of your ordinary tasks? Pause for a moment and pick one real hour today. Just one. An hour where you usually let the old worry run the room unchecked, and quietly decide that this single hour will carry the feeling instead. That is the whole of the practice. One small feeding of the flame at a time, until the hours are simply yours. I remain in the feeling I have chosen, long after the exercise has ended. The third key is this. Everyone around you, every check that arrives, every client, every offer, every unexpected kindness, is you, pushed out, appearing to you as an object because your own state has taken on a shape. And once you see this, you will never look at an ordinary day the same way again. So let us walk through one. hour by hour, and watch the mechanism working in plain sight. At 7 in the morning she wakes, and before her feet touch the floor, she spends 60 quiet seconds, feeling herself as a woman for whom money is simply not a source of anxiety, not rehearsing the feeling of getting it, just resting in the feeling of already having enough. At 8 she drives to work, and a driver cuts her off. And here is the old her, the one who would have spent the next 4 minutes in a low simmer of anger, calling money to mind through the back door of frustration. But today she lets it go in 30 seconds, because irritation is expensive and she is not spending it. At 10, her coworker mentions being stressed about rent, and instead of joining the chorus of complaint, she simply stays quiet in her own assumed sufficiency, not preaching, not correcting, just not participating in the wrong state. At noon, an email arrives about a project she thought was dead, and the old her would have called this luck, but she recognizes it now as an echo. The outer world catching up to the inward assumption she planted a week ago and has been quietly feeding every morning since. At 1, she stands in line for lunch, and the register misreads her card, and there is a flicker, just a flicker, of the old alarm rising in her chest. But she notices it the way you notice a stranger's voice in a crowded room. She does not answer it. She simply waits, calm, while the cashier tries again, and it clears, and she walks on. Because she has learned that even a flicker of fear is a doorway, and she is no longer required to walk through every doorway that opens near her. At 3, she is tired, and this is the real test. Tiredness is when old states creep back in, wearing the mask of realism. So she does not scroll her banking app looking for reassurance. She simply returns for 30 seconds to the felt sense of enough. At 4:30, a message arrives from a friend asking to borrow money, and the old her would have felt the familiar tightening, the quiet fear that giving would mean lacking, but she notices instead how easily she can say yes, not from a fear of appearing stingy, but from the plain feeling that there is more than enough to go around, and she sends it without a second thought. And something in that ease tells her more clearly than any bank balance ever could that the state has actually changed. By 6, she is home, and the day, looked at from the outside, seemed almost entirely uneventful. No fireworks, no miracle with trumpets. Just a woman quietly declining to enter the states that do not serve her, and quietly returning again and again to the one that does. And Neville Goddard would say that day was not uneventful at all. It was the entire secret in miniature. Because the world she is walking through is not solid. It is plastic. It is responsive. It is her own consciousness given shape and handed back to her as circumstance. Pause for a moment and pick one real hour from your own day today. The driver, the coworker, the message from a friend, and ask honestly what state you were occupying when it happened. Because that hour was not random. It was a mirror. And Neville Goddard taught that the outer world has no power of its own to originate anything. It can only reflect back whatever has already been assumed within. The coworker, the driver, the email, the flicker at the register, all of it, mirrors, nothing more. And the moment you stop trying to rearrange the mirror and simply change the face looking into it, the whole reflection is forced to comply. I am not managing my circumstances today. I am managing my state, and the circumstance has no choice but to follow. The fourth key is this: revision, because you cannot build a new state on top of an unrevised day and expect it to hold. Think of the day as a scroll being written even while you live it. Every scene inked the moment it happens. The tense conversation about a bill, the flinch when a price was higher than expected, the sigh over a bank notification, the small defeated shrug when a card was declined at the register. And if you let those scenes stand unedited in your memory, they will keep broadcasting the old state all through the night while you sleep, playing on repeat like a rehearsal for tomorrow's lack. So consider a man who had a hard exchange at the counter of a hardware store, the clerk short with him, the total higher than he expected, and he drove home replaying it, feeling the sting again at every red light, feeling it once more while he brushed his teeth, feeding that little scene his attention long after the scene itself had ended. And by the time he laid his head down, he had rehearsed poverty and irritation a dozen times without ever noticing he was doing it. This is how an ordinary afternoon quietly becomes the architect of an ordinary tomorrow. But Neville Goddard taught that imagination is the one power that can reach backward and reshape the day already lived. So before sleep each night, quietly, without strain, without drama, sit with that same man's day and simply edit it. See the clerk warm instead of short. See the total met without a flinch. See yourself walking out of that store light instead of heavy, and if the scene will not soften easily, do not fight it, simply replace it. Picture an entirely different exchange, one where the transaction is smooth and even pleasant, and hold that new version until it feels at least as real as the memory it is replacing. This is not lying to yourself. It is refusing to let a closed moment keep governing an open future. The past is not fixed stone the way the world insists it is. It is simply a state you are no longer required to keep visiting. You do not need permission to leave a room you already walked out of hours ago. Revise the flinch at the register. Revise the sigh over the notification. Revise the tense words about the bill. One small scene at a time until the whole day has been quietly rewritten in the only place a day ever truly lives, which is memory. And then let it go, then sleep, and you will find the tomorrow that follows carries far less residue of the yesterday you refused to leave unrevised. Because you did not simply forgive the day, you unmade its hold over you. I revise my day gently, and release it before I sleep. Breathe with me for just a moment here. If this teaching has been good company for you tonight, let the channel keep finding you tomorrow. Subscribing is the simplest way to make sure this quiet work keeps reaching you. The fifth key is this, and it is the deepest one, so let us take it slowly, in pieces, the way Neville Goddard himself would unfold it. And I ask you to give it your full attention, because everything else we have spoken of tonight rests on what is contained here. First, consider the state akin to sleep, that drowsy threshold just before you drift off, where the body has gone heavy and still, but the mind remains faintly, sweetly awake. Neville Goddard taught that this state, and not the wide-awake striving hours of your day, is the doorway where assumption sinks in deepest. Because in ordinary waking hours your critical faculty stands guard at the door of your mind like a suspicious clerk, checking every thought against the bank balance, the bills on the table, the tone of your employer's voice. But in that drowsy hinge just before sleep, the clerk grows tired and steps away from his post. And whatever feeling you hold there passes the threshold almost unchallenged, straight into the deeper mind where it takes root. So this is the practical instruction. Do not save your imaginal act for the loud, busy middle of your day. Save the most important one for the edge of sleep. Lie back, let the body grow heavy, and in that heaviness whisper the scene that implies the money has already come. Not the getting of it, the having of it. A hand signing a check without the old familiar worry. A voice saying thank you for how easily that payment cleared. Held there gently, felt fully, and then let yourself slip over into sleep still holding it. Think of a man anxious over an unpaid invoice, replaying the conversation with his landlord right up until he loses consciousness. He wakes and wonders why the day feels heavy before it has begun. He has handed his most fertile hour over to lack, and imagination, perfectly obedient, has gone to work on exactly that all through the night. Now picture that same man learning instead to lie down and, before sleep takes him, feel for a few quiet minutes the relief of the invoice already settled, the landlord's easy nod, his own steady breath. That is the doorway, open to you every night whether you have noticed it or not. And consider a young woman 2 months behind on tuition, who used to lie awake doing arithmetic in the dark. subtracting until sleep took her by exhaustion rather than peace. And she noticed the very numbers she rehearsed at night were still waiting for her unmoved in the morning. So she changed nothing about her circumstance and everything about her threshold, feeling instead, at that drowsy edge, a balance already cleared, her own shoulders already light walking a campus with nothing owed. What had been the seat of her nightly dread slowly became the one place in her day she could quietly practice being someone for whom this was no longer a problem. Second, consider persistence, because one such night will not build a fortune, and this is the boring part the title of this teaching is naming outright. The assumption must be returned to again and again, not with the electric excitement of the first night, but with the plain steadiness of a person going back to the same field every morning to gather the same bread. Neville Goddard was asked why a wish had not manifested sooner, and his answer was always some version of the same truth. The assumption was held for a night or two with feeling, then dropped the moment evidence did not arrive, and the old anxious state walked right back in and took its old chair. So persistence is not intensity, it is simply refusing to leave the room you have chosen. The young woman held her small, quiet scene not once but every night for weeks. Some nights it came warm and full, other nights it felt thin, almost like reciting words rather than feeling them, and on those thin nights the old temptation whispered that it must not be working, that she should try a louder hope, but she recognized that whisper as simply the old state trying to reclaim its chair. So she stayed, thin feeling and all, because even a thin assumption held steady outlasts a vivid one, abandoned after a single night, the state you keep returning to, plain evening after plain evening, becomes in time the state you simply are, and no longer a state you have to reach for at all. Third, consider the I am underneath all of it. Because Neville Goddard taught that I am is not a phrase, it is not a slogan you repeat, it is the naked awareness of your own being, prior to every circumstance, prior even to the wish you are assuming. And when Moses asked the voice in the burning bush for a name, the answer given was simply, I am that I am. And Neville read this not as the name of a distant deity beyond the sky, but as the deepest truth about the one asking the question. You are the I am, wearing whatever condition you have agreed to identify with. When you say, I am broke, I am behind, I am struggling, you are not describing your circumstance, you are commanding your imagination to produce more of exactly that. And when instead you learn to rest in the plain, unmodified fact, I am, without the frightened word chasing right after it, you touch the same power Moses touched at the bush, the power that needs no evidence because it stands prior to all evidence. The invoice, the tuition, the number on any screen, none of it is more real than the I am contemplating it. The circumstance borrows its whole authority from the one regarding it. And the instant you stop lending your authority to the circumstance stands there powerless, a costume with no one left inside it. So consider, tonight, at that drowsy threshold, dropping the modifiers one at a time, not forcing a lie about your bank account, simply resting a few quiet minutes in the unmodified I am, feeling it as a floor beneath you that circumstance cannot crack. And from that resting place, quietly draping over it the feeling of provided for, the way you might draw a warm blanket over shoulders that were never truly cold, only mistaken about what they were wearing, and this, held nightly at the threshold of sleep, persisted in without drama, rooted always in the unshakable I am beneath it, is the whole of the fifth key. 3 turns of one single doorway, the drowsy threshold where assumption enters unguarded, the plain persistence that refuses to abandon the room, and the naked I am, that needed no evidence to begin with. I am the one this money already belongs to, and I rest in that until it shows itself. The 6th key is this, and it is the gentlest one: patience with the plainness of it all, because somewhere in the middle of practicing everything you have heard today, a familiar voice will rise up and whisper that nothing is happening, that this is too slow, too quiet, too ordinary to be real power. And Neville Goddard met this exact doubt often, teaching that the interval between the assumption and its fulfillment is not empty. It is not evidence of failure. It is simply the time it takes for the unseen to become the seen. Think of a woman baking bread on a Sunday afternoon. She mixes the dough, feels it warm and alive beneath her hands, sets it in the oven, and closes the door. For the first 10 minutes she smells nothing, sees nothing, hears only the low hum of heat doing its work behind a shut door. If she is wise, she walks away, sets the table, waters a plant, lets the oven be the oven. But if she is anxious, she opens that door every few minutes to check. And each time she opens it, the heat escapes and the rising stops. And the loaf she pulls out an hour later is flat, tasting faintly of her own impatience. This is exactly what happens to the assumption you have planted. Every time you open the door of your mind to check whether the sign has come, whether the number has moved, you let the warmth escape and slow the very rising you are praying for. It is not that the universe punishes you for checking. It is simply that checking is itself a return to the old state of lack, and imagination answers the state you are actually standing in, not the one you visited 5 minutes ago. And consider the man who plants bulbs in the cold ground of autumn, pressing each one down into soil that already feels like it is closing for the season. And if you stood at his fence in December, you would see nothing, only frozen ground giving no report at all. If he were foolish, he would dig each bulb back up to check that it had not failed him. And in checking, he would kill the very thing he disturbed, but he does not dig, he simply trusts what he cannot see. Shoveling snow, living his ordinary winter, while beneath the frost, unseen, unhurried, the thing he planted is already becoming what he told it to become. This is patience, not the gritted teeth kind, but the plain quiet kind a farmer has. Who has simply seen this process work before and no longer needs to supervise it. So let the oven door stay shut a while longer. Let the field stay quiet, because a seed does not perform for the gardener, and a loaf does not rise for an audience. Both simply keep doing in the dark what you already told them to do in the light. Your part was the mixing, the planting, the assuming. And it is finished. The growing is no longer your labor. It is only your trust. It is not your watching that ripens the fruit. It is your leaving it alone that does. I trust the unseen working, even while the field looks perfectly still. Here is the whole picture. It is not effort that moves money. It is state. It is not a single dramatic feeling that builds a fortune. It is a feeling lived in daily. It is not your circumstances shaping you. It is you, pushed out into every circumstance around you. It is not your yesterday left standing as fact. It is your yesterday gently revised before sleep. It is not the wide-awake striving hours where assumption goes deepest. It is the drowsy threshold at the edge of sleep, held with persistence, rooted in the unmodified I am. And it is not the silence of the interval proving you wrong. It is the seed proving nothing needs to be dug up to be believed in. 6 keys, but really 1 key, turned 6 times. The plain daily insistence that you are already the one this abundance belongs to. And if you are ready to stop practicing this alone in scattered moments, and instead walk it daily, held by the hand, for 3 full weeks of structured living in the end, the 21-day reality shift was built exactly for this. Gentle daily practices, revision guided step by step, imaginal acts written out for you so you never wonder what to do next. It is available now for a small one-time gift of $27. Fully guaranteed. If it does not serve you, simply ask and it is returned. The link is in the description below, waiting for whenever you feel ready. I am the one for whom money moves with ease. I am already living inside the abundance I have been asking for. Imagination creates my reality. And it is boring, friend. Plain, quiet, almost embarrassingly ordinary. But this, exactly this, is how the money comes.